Well, happy Mother's Day once again to all the mothers that are here joining us. We are on week 3 of our series, Failure to Launch, and we've been diving into different ways that the church can fail at launching to accomplish what Jesus commanded us to do, which is to make disciples and to teach all that he has commanded and baptizing them. Now, once again, there's many ways that a church can fail at this. It's very simple to do. As soon as you add some dynamics, it just makes it crash. And, as I was thinking about this morning, celebrating Mother's Day, I think that sometimes failure is something that we're scared of, not only in the church, but even as a parent. As a mother, I'm pretty sure that sometimes there are times where you just feel like, what am I doing wrong in this relationship? My kids maybe aren't going down the right path. Maybe my kids are doing choice or making choices that are not good. And as we celebrate moms, I know that sometimes it's difficult knowing in ways that you could be failing, and individually, as a husband, I know that sometimes I feel like I'm failing there. Sometimes as a son, as an employee, whatever it is, you could feel like you're failing in many ways. But we have to ask ourselves sometimes that question so that we could get better at what we're moving towards. And as a pastor, I sometimes ask myself, what it is that I or corporately, we might be doing that might be causing us to fail in what Christ called us to. And it's very easy to deviate in a certain way that will prevent us from accomplishing the Great Commission, which is given to us in Matthew 28. But to reach those that are near and far, baptizing them and teaching them all that this book contains, the Bible contains. Now, with that being said, it also presents a challenge in that because we're preaching not based off of what I want to preach, it's based off of what God has already spoken. And sometimes it's difficult because conveying these truths it might become difficult when you're trying to convey them with grace and with love, but yet conveying them with truth and with boldness. It's a difficult thing to do, not only as a pastor, but even as a parent. If once again, if you're a mom or a dad, you understand that sometimes this becomes challenging in doing with our kids. Telling them the truth that they need to hear in a way that is still conveyed as loving, and it's difficult to do because not all the time will it be seen through the lens of love. Sometimes it'll be seen through the lens of restriction. You don't want me to have any fun. And the church sometimes doesn't move forward in conveying the truths for fear of everything that is happening. It's really no surprise, but as you look at the headlines in the media today, there seems to be a very strong divide in our politics, but that's not the only place. It especially is true when it comes to our stance that is driven by the values of our faith. Whenever it comes to those values, they are questioned, and especially when it comes to hot topics. And even within the church, this is something that permeates the walls of the church. Sometimes there's people in here, and just like the girl in the opening clip questions, there are people that question the same thing, which is not a negative thing. But you question, how do we actually know that the values that we hold are any more valuable than anyone else's? How do you know that what you believe trumps everybody else's belief? How do you know that what you value is more important than what I value outside of the church? And the question becomes, how do we answer that as a church? And I can simply point you to the fact that what is contained in the Bible, the life that we are called to, and I know that people will ask all sorts of questions in regards to this, but I'm not going to dive into those today. We will dive into those another time. But the Bible contains not only what protects the best interest of me, it protects the best interest of you. See, it's not just about what is there for me. It's about loving my neighbor as myself, to help those that are in need, to be the voice for those who have no voice, to pray for those who persecute me, who hate me. See, my faith calls me to do something not only about my condition, but also to care for the condition of my neighbor. And my values don't end with what is convenient for me. My values fight for the welfare of those around me. My values don't start with I, but they start with you. But these values are not confined by my opinion, by my feelings, by what is convenient to me, or what you tell me is convenient for you. What I hold on to as truth, what we hold on to as truth as a church, has already been established by the one who created us. And those values define how we see others. And values don't, by definition, they don't diminish or cheapen a person. It adds worth to them. See, and the values that we hold to as a church is that every single one of you has value. And I should see that value in myself. And my values are valid, not because I just want them to trump yours, but because they fight for the good of everyone, not just individually, but corporately. In the midst of conversations that you may have with people as you start getting into this, why do your values hold more weight than mine? There will be arguments, conversations, and debates that sometimes begins to categorize the church as an institution of hatred and rejection, which, quite frankly, that is one of the things that makes me sick to my stomach, because that is not what we're about. The issue is when somebody disagrees with another person, it's seen as hatred and rejection. That's not what hatred is. What we value matters. Belief and values are so critical to the church because it defines how we view the world and life, and it gives us the value defining life in the world. Because we believe that God created the world and life, we value life and everything in it. Because we believe that God ordained marriage between a man and a woman, we hold on to the value of biblical marriage. And that doesn't mean that we diminish the love extended to an individual just because they disagree with us. We are not called to hatred, we're called to love. But my love for an individual will never diminish the value that I hold on to that is biblical. And that's the way that we are called to be as a church, so that we don't look like that, so that we don't crash. We hold on to the truths that are contained in the Bible, regardless of how uncomfortable they may make me feel, or they might make you feel as well. Values are not derived from feelings, because we all have different feelings, we all have different opinions, and many opinions don't contain truth because there are multiple amounts of opinions. Truth has to be absolute. That means that there has to be one source of truth. There is not multiple sources of the truth. And as we face the culture, as we face different people with different opinions, we have to do it in this way. We are called to be on guard in what we believe, stand firm in the faith, to be courageous and to be strong. Why? Because when people oppose you, you need courage and you need to be strong in the midst of that. You need to stand firm for what you believe, and that is what we are called to be as a church. People that are standing firm, that are on guard for people that might be coming in and trying to divide the church. Why? Because we hold to biblical truth. But as we do this, as we convey the truth, we do everything with love. We have to do it in a way that is compassionate for the person, even though we disagree with their lifestyle or whatever it may be. To stand firm on the faith which produces not only belief, but also conviction to live to a higher standard. And it's going to require strength. It's going to require courage. But we continue to stand firm in everything that we are doing because we're going to do it in love. And the world may not see it as loving, but our values place emphasis on loving the created being rather than the created being's created ideas. We hold on to the person and saying, you have worth, you have value. I may disagree with everything that you believe to be true, but I love you for who God created you to be. And at times we get to churches that compromise the value of what the Bible says in an attempt to individually win the person temporarily rather than eternally. Sometimes the church fails to make disciples because we strive to make church attenders. We fail to convey the values of our faith, and in turn, we fail to launch people into a faith that articulates their value. See, we cheapen the people by cheapening our value. If we say we're going to lower the standard, then that means that your value is also lowered as well. One of the reasons that churches may fail in the mission, and I'm not talking about church growth. Once again, we're not scared of church growth going up or going down. What we want is to make disciples. But one of the reasons that churches may fail in the mission is for fear of articulating a biblical value that contradicts popular opinion. We're scared. What is that going to mean for our numbers? What is that going to mean in regards to maybe being accepted socially? And sometimes it could be seen through the lens of a parent. You know, as we once again honor the role of and the work that a mom plays in the life of a child. It's often not articulated well enough. Sometimes it's not conveyed well enough because a mom does so much, you know. They wake up in the middle of the night when their child is crying to feed them or whatever it is. A mom plays such a vital role, not only, in certain times of the day, but 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And this work doesn't end, as soon as kids grow a little bit less dependent. It continues. Why? Because a mom and a dad is trying to launch them into adulthood, understanding that they're going to become dependent at some point, but they're playing the role in training them. And now as we do this, sometimes the role of a parent gets a little bit tricky because we want to be people that are affirming. We want to affirm absolutely everything. But I want to tell you that affirmation is one form of training, but denial is another one. See, sometimes hearing no is not a negative thing. It trains us. It helps us to know what we shouldn't be doing. Affirmation is great because it places value, but denial also helps us to understand what we value. Denial is not neglecting a person of living. It is often protecting them from significant harm. My wife and I, once again, I've said this before, but we're a team. We work together. We want for our kids to understand the value that we see in them. And we're not just trying to train them with a nose to try to spare ourselves from worry, but because we hope to spare them of pain. There's consequences that won't only affect them directly, but it will affect others indirectly. So my wife, in this process, we want for them to see the value in themselves, and then we want for them to see the value of others. And it's a hard thing to try to train, to try to launch them into adulthood, especially when you have people with all sorts of opinions of how you should be raising your kids. And I could tell you, I could care less how you think I should be raising my kids. The Bible tells me how I should raise my kids. The Bible tells me from beginning to end to train them with purpose, to train them with love, to train them with value, with an understanding of their faith, because their faith is so core to everything that they will do in this life. Belief and values define who they will be. And if they can't figure out to value their neighbor, they will be a disservice to our community. And I hope that you are raising your kids biblically. And I'm here to affirm that. Continue to do that. Don't worry about what the culture tells you should be doing. Don't worry about what other people tell you should be doing. Look at the Bible, understand the Bible, and if somebody's giving you biblical advice, follow that advice. Hold on to what is true and not to what is cultural. Culture changes, but truth remains constant. What we need in the church is a firm foundation, not only for us here, but once again, to raise our kids. But a foundation is something that is immovable. It doesn't change. It doesn't shake. And whatever your foundation is, look at it this way. When you see NASA launching a rocket or anything like that, they have a foundation, a pad that they launch that rocket from. And it has to be firm. It has to be able to be level. It has to be able to shoot or launch whatever needs to go from there. Because if it's not, it will detour some of the mission that it has to accomplish. And I remember in regards to having a firm foundation, a few years back, I was in Texas. I love going to Texas. That's where I grew up back to my family. But I love going back to Texas during my birthday. And the reason why is because my birthday is July 3rd. It's close enough to the 4th of July. And fireworks are great everywhere except in the state of Minnesota, and as a pyro, I love popping fireworks, so I love going back to Texas and popping fireworks because you get those fireworks that go up in the air a long distance and you don't have to worry about the cops showing up and citing you. So we went down there and I remember buying this little cannon, and this cannon has a tube. In the bottom, it has a base. You set it down there. It has like balls that are about this big, like cannonballs, and it has like a long fuse. You put it in there, you light it, and then you run. So I remember we got this cannon, and I set it down, and I thought it was solid, and I put it down, and I put the ball in there. I lit the fuse, and as I lit the fuse, that thing goes crazy. And as I'm running, everybody looks and everybody has to run too because that thing tipped over. So everybody's hiding behind cars, behind other human beings, behind mailboxes and everything. And the reason why is because we knew it was going to fire in the place that it was not intended to go to. During this time, I'm at my brother-in-law's mom's house. That's where we're popping the fireworks at. And the ball goes straight to her window, to the house in her window. And unfortunately, it didn't break the window, but it didn't go where we wanted to. See, at times we, as followers of Jesus Christ, look like that. We have a foundation that is so cheap, that is not good, that anything will make it tip over, and you're going to go in the wrong direction. You're not making disciples, you're making church attenders. And during times like this, it's difficult as we have to understand that our foundation is so crucial, because it's everything that holds us together. It's everything that we launch forth from. And sometimes our foundation is culturally based. Sometimes it's opinion driven. But as a follower of Jesus Christ, as followers of Jesus Christ, we are called not to base our faith on ideas, cultural trends, or cultural truths that weaken us. We are called to be people who have a firm foundation, and if you don't like how that sounds, that's fine. You could take it up with Jesus when you meet him in heaven. But Matthew 7:24 says, anyone who listens to my teachings and follows it is wise like a person who builds a house on solid rock. Now, understand that your foundation is so crucial. I mean, I remember when I was in North Dakota, we actually had a mobile home. And they're anchored to the ground. They don't have a foundation. Every time that there was a storm that would come close to it, we had to go somewhere where they actually had a foundation that was solid. Why? Because we knew that if there was a storm, that thing was gone. You need something that is solid, that will anchor you, that will hold you down. And Jesus is saying, anyone who listens to everything that I have to say, to my teachings, is wise. It's like having something solid to anchor yourself to. Though the rain comes and torrents and floodwaters rise and winds beat against the house, it won't collapse because it is built on bedrock. As things get difficult in life, as we are experiencing this divide in our country because of values that we hold on to, understand that we might sway in regards to, we might go back and forth, but at the same time, our foundation is always anchored on what Christ said. But anyone who hears my teaching and doesn't obey it is foolish, like a person who builds a house on sand. When the rains and floods come and the winds beat against that house, it will collapse with a mighty crash. Sometimes the reason that churches fail is because they don't have a firm foundation. They're built on something that is shakeable. In order to have a faith that is unshakable, you must have a foundation that is unshakable. In order to withstand difficult circumstances, you must have a firm platform. Once again, in the world that we are living in, we have many people who will challenge and question what we value and what is foundational to our faith. Not only you individually, but they will challenge the church collectively. Why do you believe that? Why is it that you believe that your truth is more important than mine? Once again, because we value the individual. It's not just about what helps and benefits us. And as a follower of Jesus Christ, I listen and hold on to not to what I believe to be true, not what you believe to be true, but what the Bible, what our Creator has established to be true. What benefits not only my life, but the lives and well-being of others. And we may fail at our mission, the mission given by Jesus, for failure of building the church on a solid foundation. Once again, we go with trends. We go with whatever sounds appealing, whatever will bring people to the church. And I'm telling you, we have to stand firm on the foundation, because that's why the church is established. Our foundation doesn't only help us to launch forward from it, but foundations are what we keep on going back to. That's where everything gets built from. When people question everything that we hold on to, we go back to our foundation. And we continue to speak loudly about our values and foundation. But we have to do it in love. We have to do it with grace. And during times where people feel like it's not being done with grace, all that the church does is this. And in the opening clip, you heard the girl that said, the world knows what the church is against, but it's getting harder and harder to know what it's for. And I'm not going to lie, that statement kind of rubs me the wrong way, because I believe that they're interchangeable. I think that one and the other are the same. What we stand against because we stand for something. See, when I stand for something, I'm going to stand against something else. It's interchangeable. It's the same thing. I believe that maybe the truth or the statement was trying to get across, what the statement was trying to get across is the difference in the approach. And maybe it is that the church has become so good at defining the don'ts without defining the whys. Don't do this, but we never say why. And it hurts people in regards to they don't understand the reasoning for it. For example, my son Asher, when he was 3 years old, he got into the habit. We had this couch in the living room, and it was right in the middle of the room, so there's no wall behind it. But he got into the habit where he would take his sucker, popsicle, whatever it was, and he would go on the couch, sit on the very top, and just lay on it, almost like a cat, And he would just lay on top of it, and we kept on telling him, "Don't do that. You're going to end up falling." And he was not a very good listener back then, and he did it anyways. And one day I was actually on the desk, and I was filling out this resume. As I'm filling out the resume, I hear this thump, and I knew what it was. And then he starts crying. Well, as we run to him, to make sure that it's okay, his arm was not okay. You could just see that it was broken. So at that point, I get him in the vehicle, get him in the car, start driving like 100 miles plus, trying to get my son to the hospital. And I have my hazards on, trying to get him there. Now, as I'm doing this, I was like, I told you not to do this. My heart is breaking. My heart is hurting for him. I'm hurting for him. But the reason that I told him not to was because I knew that this was a possibility. I knew that this would happen because he's just a little boy playing. And when it comes to things like this, sometimes we're very bad at articulating the whys. We just tell people, don't do that. Why? And my son Asher recognized why when he had a cast in his arm. See, the church is here not to try to point the finger, but to say, there's this consequence that comes with your choices. And what I'm trying to do is spare you from everything that will come behind it. We are a voice that advocates for the individual, that is trying to say, spare yourself from the pain. And when it comes to hot topic issues, sometimes it's easier to remain silent because we don't want to upset anyone. But yet we continue to speak loudly with boldness because we care for people. We hold firm to our values in this book because we understand that there's a reason why they exist. We want to be a church that advocates for people that are hurting. We want for them to come into a lifestyle that is better. We want to be advocates for people that have no voice and for those whose voices have been silenced. When it comes to hot topic issues, sometimes it's easier just not to say anything because we don't want to offend anyone. But I'm telling you, we're not here trying to offend you. We're pro-life because we don't just care for the individuals, we care for life across the board. As a Hispanic, I can tell you that it doesn't matter what I am. Each one of us, regardless of color, regardless of race, whatever it is, every single life matters. My life, because I might be a minority, doesn't get over elevated because I want it to be. Every single life matters. We are against choice, not because we're trying to deprive you of anything, but because we stand for the life that has become a choice. Whether you agree with me or disagree with me, you have the right to have your opinion. Your life matters. Whether you hate me or you love me, whether you agree with me or disagree with me, your life matters, and God sent his son Jesus to prove it to you. That he wants a relationship with you that can change your life radically. Every single life matters, whether in the womb or on life support. Lives matter. We as a church have to become the voice for those without one. And in our culture right now, this is a big issue. We place emphasis, as a church, we say that all lives matter, but yet we don't seem to understand and gravitate to the idea that we have to do something about it. Sometimes we value certain lives and place emphasis on certain ones, those that agree with us, but neglect the ones that disagree with us. Life in general is precious. And Proverbs 31:8 says, speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. Ensure justice for those being crushed. And there's millions that are being crushed. We are called to be the voice for those without one. And once again, it's easier to remain silent because we don't want to stir the pot. We don't want to be seen as a hater or somebody that's trying to reject someone. We have to stand on our foundation. That is a value that we hold on to because the Bible tells us that life is valuable. In the womb, it's valuable. And if you haven't seen in the news, I mean, once again, this is a hot topic. A lot of people are stirred up about it, whether you're on one side of the token or the other one. There's arguments, there's debates on this. And just recently, there was a representative from Philadelphia who verbally abused and verbally attacked two young ladies, as well as an elderly lady as well. And this gentleman was very aggressive in his approach. Once again, as followers of Jesus Christ, we're not called to be aggressors in that way. But I love what a gentleman who's a complete stud by the name of Matt Walsh did. He assembled a rally to come and speak about this issue. And in this rally, he said this. He responded by saying, we just can't be pro-life in our heads and in our minds. We have to live that truth. We have to bring that truth into the real world. See, for some of us, we read the Bible and we know the truth, but we don't live it out. We don't do anything about it. I mean, one of the things that he said in the beginning of the clip, he's like, I'm glad that there are people that didn't just hit the thumbs up and just moved along or a sad emoji face. There's people that are doing something about it. And honestly, I could tell you that that's one of the things that drives me bonkers about social media. We feel like we're doing something by just sharing something. Do something about it. We just can't be pro-life in our heads and in our minds. We have to live that truth out. Why? Because truth isn't contained and bottled up. Knowing the truth that somebody is dying doesn't mean that you just know it and you let it go. You speak up and do something about it. Not in judgment, but in love and in grace for the individual. Not in condemnation, but out of love. He continued by saying, we will not be intimidated. We will not be silenced. If you try to shut us up, we're only going to get louder. And if you try to shame us, we're only going to stand taller. And if you try to scare us, we're only going to grow bolder. We know that our case is just. We know that we are right. We stand firm in that truth. We have truth on our side, and we will wield it like a sword to defend the unborn. See, I don't care if you disagree with me. I stand with truth. And I stand boldly. If people try to scare us, we stand bolder. If people try to push us to the side, we continue to push forward. As people who are called to care for others, let's do something about it instead of just posting something about it. Let's hold on to that truth across the board. As we try to get silence, let us speak even louder. He continues by saying, think about the victims we have chosen, children. The most innocent, the most pure, the most beautiful of all people are the precise ones that we have targeted. These are people who have harmed no one. They have done nothing wrong. They are filled with joy and potential and love. And if we cannot see the worth and value in a child, then who can we see it in? If we can't see the worth and value of a child, who could you see it in? We stand against choice because we stand for life. Because every single life matters, in the womb or outside of it. King David writes, you made all the delicate inner parts of my body and knit me together in my mother's womb. We are preciously crafted. It doesn't matter whether you want to say that you don't believe in God or not. Your body points to the fact that you were intricately created in such a way that you have value. At Epicenter, we value life. We fight for life because every life is a gift. We are called to display externally the truth that we have received internally. See, truth doesn't just stay contained, it goes out. Let's be people who become advocates for justice and for truth. Let us live out the truth and launch from the foundation that we have. Let us be people who stand on the truth and wield it like a sword. Because we don't only want people to hear what we're against, we want for them to understand why we're for it. In a nutshell, all lives matter. but your opinion of what life should stay doesn't affect the life that I will fight for. Every single person in this room today has the gift of life. And I'm here to tell you that your life is precious. Your life matters. And as we think about the day that we're observing today, we all have a thankful for the gift of life. We all have a mom. And whether she's passed on or she's still here, we all came from a woman. And I want to encourage you. Sometimes, like I mentioned at the beginning of the service, sometimes we don't do a very good job at portraying our gratitude for the women in our life that gave us life. Let us be people who do that 365 days a year, not just once a day. And I want to encourage you to also understand that your life has value, and a woman gave birth to you. And I want you to understand that we have to fight for life. Just like your life matters, just like I would fight for your life, let's fight for the lives of others. And there are people who might be struggling in their lives where they're just going through difficult times. Come alongside of them with grace and with love, not with condemnation. That's not your job. You are called to affirm what is true and what is not, and do it in a way that honors God. And if you have no idea how to do that, I want to encourage you to maybe send them to someone that can. And last week, it was brought up to me by somebody that attends our church about an organization called Lakes Area Pregnancy Support Center. And, they sent us these little bottles, which I want to encourage you, maybe at times it's easier just not to assume that it's not happening, but it is. And it's good to have an organization that comes alongside of people and helps them in this process that is difficult for them, because it is difficult. And the way that we can be a part of this is by helping them fill these bottles with change, with dollars, with checks. And I know that sometimes people come and it's like the church is always asking for money. Well, the beauty of it, I'm not asking for money for the church. I'm asking money for an organization that is helping people that are struggling in their lives, in whatever case it may be. And I'm asking you to maybe not see it as a money jar that you have to put money into. I want you to maybe change your perspective on what this means. What if this means the life of a child? What if this means comfort and peace with somebody coming alongside this person so that they could choose life? And Lakes Area Pregnancy Center is, as I've kind of studied up on it, it's a great organization, and in a few minutes you're going to be hearing from it. But I encourage you, would you consider taking one of these bottles, and they don't have to be returned till Father's Day, but would you consider taking one of these bottles and possibly making a difference in the life of another? And maybe it won't even cost you anything. Maybe it's going to, in the parking lot of Walmart, Super One, so forth and so on, and pick up all the pennies that you can find. Make a difference in the life of someone. Make a difference, because we don't want to just be a church that is engaged in proclaiming this truth that we value life, that we know that truth. We want to stand for it, and we want to be led by action. Let's pray.